All right, thank you all for being here today. We will get started. We're talking about buyer conversion. Okay, we're going to talk about really the 5 stages or 5 steps during this buyer conversion process. As we alluded to, we probably will not get all the way through all 5 steps, okay, but we're going to start setting some groundwork.
Something popped up.
Hmm?
Something popped up and then just.
It disappeared, as long as it disappeared, we're all good.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so Ryan, why are you here this morning?
No, yeah, looking for ways for me to streamline my process.
Okay,
With my buyers, I tend to take a kind of a very casual conversational approach. And I'm thinking that maybe a little more intentional and direct in conversations would be more effective, possibly. I don't know, I do well with the conversation piece,
okay.
so.
So more guidance on how to be more intentional with your conversation.
Yeah, just kind of looking over some of the pages in here, like. I think one area where I'm weak is having something to put in their hand. When I
Okay,
focus too much on a conversation, I'm gonna have something to figure out something that I just put in their hand.
okay, so something tangible for them to take away, okay. Buyer consult packets are big, right, for doing a consult, but there's also some supplements in your packets here at the end that could be helpful to you, okay? Mauricio, we'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Jeff, why are you here?
I was kind of hoping to,
Hi, Bree.
get a intentional, proactive, and focused approach for helping buyers find and purchase the perfect home.
Wow, that's great.
Actually, first of all, it's,
Right there.
yeah, no,
Man,
I,
10 stars for Jeff.
I'm just looking, kind of like what you were saying, looking for ways to upgrade what I do, and I do have a buyer packet that I
Okay.
created, and I wanted to maybe polish that up and learn some other things too.
Okay,
Maybe put in or how to use it or whatever.
yeah, okay. What additional tools should you guys either have up or go tweak once you finish this class today?
Objection journal.
Well, that would be one, yes, that's a good.
Buyer process.
Buyer process as well, yeah, so both of those tools, you should be picking up things to where you're gonna be going and tweaking those, right? Because remember that buyer process, those 108 steps, that's just kind of that initial framework. And then you get to go in there and kind of start tweaking. Because if I go in and see you've been using your buyer process, but yet never updated it, I'm gonna be like, come on, good cheap, right? Like, it's good, it's an initial framework, but there's gonna be things you do differently. There's gonna be some reminders where you're like, ooh, when I do that step, I'm gonna give myself 2 or 3 extra reminders so that I don't forget these things. So that way, every single buyer that I work with, when that step comes up, it triggers in my mind, oh yeah, these extra 3 reminders, all right? So every time you're in a class, you should be thinking, what can I add to my objection journal? What can I add to my buyer and seller process or seller process that will make it that much better, okay? Because the whole point of going to a class is if I walk away with 1 or 2 tweaks to my buyer process, that is a win. If I go to R4 or I go to a conference, walking away with 50 pages of notes, wonderful. But if I actually walk away with some changes to my process, then it's a win. Okay, Jeff, what were you gonna say?
I had a question. I think I kind of had an idea based on just the 2 words, but objection journal. I know you guys must be pretty well known here. I'm just not familiar.
Okay, who can tell us what the objection journal is? Mauricio?
In classes when we get like go over scripts at the end of the course, we have in our business tools.
In your agent folder.
Agent folder, you go in and kind of like type in the script and what your a couple of responses, and then you kind of for make yourself familiar with it.
Okay.
That way, when you come across these questions, you already have an answer to, well, some guidance to have a answer instead of just stuttering and, you know, kind of
Yeah.
like.
And just remind me, I'll show you specifically. I think you and I meet today, or is that tomorrow? Tomorrow, I'll just show you tomorrow. We have the objection journals in your folders. And it's there, and you can have as many tabs as you want, it starts with a buyer tab and a seller tab. And to Mauricia's point, it's like every time you hear something like that is a really good script. You go into your journal and you put it there, so it's saved forever. If you don't do that, if I don't have a central repository for all my scripting, where is it all? All over the place, we don't even know, it's in all the packets, it's written here, it's a post-it note here, it's this note from this conference, I have all these scripts that are awesome. But I don't have any one central place that I put them. And if I don't have a central place to put them, what's the chances that I'm actually practicing them regularly? Not good, probably, yes. You have something further?
No, I mean, I've got a lot in a notebook from different areas, but I mean, if you just try something like.
I would encourage you to take it from the notebook and put it into your journal. Okay, Mauricia?
To answer your question while I'm here.
Oh, yes.
Just after my last experience, I wanna like have a better process and be
Okay.
better ready to.
Okay, so you found some weaknesses in your
Yes.
process with your buyer that you're like, yeah, we probably need to fix that, okay?
Have better outcome.
Okay, yep, for sure. Carrie, what are you?
I meet most of my people from open houses, and so I've done the open house class and I started utilizing some of that, I need to turn some of those leads into buyers. And so that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, getting 100 leads is great, but if I can't convert them, if I don't have a process to convert them, what good are those leads? Right? Okay, Bernice, why are you here?
I am here because I.
So we're here to read. Okay, the basics are what matter, right? That's why we do our accountability groups, why, it might even get boring to you sometimes, I have no idea, but it's like, no. Are you focused on the basics? Are you consistent with the basics? If you wanna be successful in real estate, be consistent with the basics. Okay, Alex, what about you?
We've kind of gone over it, but newer like that, and just sticking to that and making sure it doesn't fall off. Like you said, 90% of people that just stop after they go to sale, they'll check up and then create referrals from there, so just making sure that process is always going.
Okay, all right, yeah, and we'll be focusing really, which quadrant are we focusing on? We're really focused right here for this, right? Up in this conversion part, which then of course ties down into this. Do you have the ultimate fan experience? Well. Yes, I think you've been updating your processes, we did. Bree,
Just to keep the skills sharp. Reminded.
okay. Does everybody feel like they are good at conversion?
Be better.
So, okay. Well, the goal of after this class and all the subsequent classes, run all the classes into what teach you how to do that and be confident. I want you guys to feel like if I can just get in front of somebody, if I can get a conversation with somebody, I will convert that person. I want your all's confidence level to be up there, so if I ask how comfortable are you, like, I'm comfortable. Then all I need to do is go create opportunity. And once I create the opportunity, I'm comfortable with my process, I'm comfortable with my skill set, I'm comfortable with my verbiage. If I get in front of you, I will convert you. Make sense? So we're being very intentional today to focus on some of that. Today, we're setting some of the groundwork, some of our beliefs, etc. And what is our purpose? Remember, right, Jeff just quoted this one for us. We want an intentional and proactive and focused approach. Would you agree that most agents are not intentional? They're very reactive. And if you allow yourself to drift, you will become reactive. I promise you. That's just the way it goes. We want to be very proactive, meaning we are going out, we are causing this to happen, and we want to be very focused. Why do I need to be focused?
Because if you're not focused, then you're not. Doing your job, you're all over the place,
That's
you're
the
not.
key. I will be all over the place. Have you ever showed up to the office and put in a full day's work? And left at the end of the day, and like, I don't really know, like. What did I actually accomplish today? Did I really move the needle forward, or was I just there putting out fires and ranting and doing things? We want to be very focused, okay? And we want to be able to help buyers find and purchase their perfect home. So our expectation is what, that we should be able to feel confident enough to enter into these working relationships with who? Serious buyers. I promise you, you can enter into a lot of relationships with buyers. But we want serious buyers, okay, so then the question is, do you have a process on how you sort through and find the serious ones? What is our result? We want additional closings. You guys should recognize that, we always have an operational model in here, so it doesn't really matter what your strategies are, you're bringing in potential new clients, we're looking for buyers, we move them into client care, and we leverage from there, okay? It's gonna teach us the 5 stages of effectively working with buyers. Anybody have a guess what those 5 stages are without looking at your paperwork? Do you have skilled in momentum or what? Think through your process right now, what are your stages? I'm glad you guys are here, this will be good, okay? Yeah, you need to have a very intentional process, right, with multiple steps to that process. If we want a high conversion rate on our buyers, all right, so we're gonna learn that. So the 5 stages of effectively working with buyers. We want to facilitate buyer conversations. We want to be able to identify appropriate properties, prepare the showing packages, show the homes properly, overcome common buyer hesitations and close sales. Okay, that's what our goal is. We're designed here to turn typical agents into highly respected and sought after buyer consultants. Do you want to be sought after? Yes, we do, right? Remember how we spent a lot of time talking about building a business based on attraction, not chasing? Your first year or 2 in the business, you will be chasing. That's just what's gonna happen. But if you remember this model and your whole purpose behind that chasing is to build a database of this, you will feel the shift in your business where you move away from having to chase and business begins to be attracted to you. That's what we want to do. Part of being able to attract that business is what? Being a highly sought after buyer's consultant. Remember how we say duplicable processes and systems that generate results result in what? What? Success, yes, repeat business and referrals is what that builds, right? So the question is, does every single one of your buyers receive that same process? If you don't have a written down process with checklists and everything going, they're not getting this. I promise you it's not happening. You may think you are, but it's not. Okay, they're receiving a different one. Brian already ratted himself out. He says, I'm pretty comfortable with my buyers. Getting comfortable can be a little bit dangerous. Who are we normally the most comfortable with? Friends and family, the people that we know well. Have you ever cheated them on the process? Your friends, Marisha's laughing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably yes. We're probably all guilty of that, right? Why? I already know them. They trust me. I don't need to do a consultation with them. I don't need to do any of that. What gets me referrals? Duplicable processes and systems that are amazing. That's this ultimate fan experience. Your friends and family should get the best of the best, but instead we cheat them. Just trust me, we don't need to do a constant, don't do that, okay? You're gonna have a system and an approach that every single buyer, I don't care if they're friends, family, or someone you just met, they're all gonna be funneled into this same process. Does that make sense? Because I want my friends and my families to be raving about the process they just experienced. Because I promise you, if you are not running them through the same process, you are falling victim to becoming what? A typical agent. And they don't really see a whole lot different in you than anybody else, right? They did fine things. That's not gonna build you a business where you have a ton of raving fans. Your strongest raving fans should be these people that know you, like you, trust them. So don't cheat them. Do not cheat them in the process. And why do we cheat them? Why do you think that is? Why do I sometimes get lax?
Cause you think they're gonna use you anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I already got the business, it doesn't matter, no problem. Get that out of your mindset, okay? You wanna give them the most amazing experience possible so they continue to be a raving fan. Okay, alright, moving on. This is the financial security of an effective lead converter. This should look very familiar. What changes between the agents that are in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, year 1, year 2, year 3? What's the big difference, you think? It's what?
Conversations,
Competition?
conversation.
Oh, conversation, what'd you say, Alex?
percent by.
Percent by, okay, well, what I should see is I should start seeing numbers going up across the board, right? More people are showing up to my appointments, correct? Then what happens? More people qualify, because I'm getting more serious buyers and a higher percentage buy. But the big one is, why are more people showing up?
Because you have an effective process.
I have an effective process and I can show value. Who all here is comfortable enough right now to show me enough value to get me to commit to a buyer consultation? Because we've been hitting this hard lately, multiple classes going over this one, right? You guys know it, yeah? Anybody? Anybody comfortable enough with their dialogue to get me to agree to a buyer consultation? All right, that tells me we have some ground to work. Because I think I've role played that one for you guys probably no less than 10,000 times. Like how you layered the value to get someone who you just met at an open house to agree to what? Meet you for a consultation. Because it's wonderful that I meet them at the open house and have a good conversation with them, maybe even gave them a card. Are they gonna call me? Probably not. Probably not, let's just be honest, okay? Because I'm performing like a typical agent. So I invite you guys to go back maybe to the open house boot camps and all those other ones where I'm role playing that value proposition on how we get there, because what's the number one question we ask? If I'm in an open house, sign call, I'm on online lead, what is our question?
What plastic are you using?
There you go. What process are you using to go about finding your next home? That's the question. And then what? They give me an answer. And then I have a response to that answer. Because they're only going to tell me a certain number of things, right? Because remember, the questions we don't ask are you working with me? You know, all those things. We don't ask those questions. Okay. I ask the question, what process are you using? They say, we just been calling sign calls. I have a response for that, right? Everybody's comfortable on how to explain why that's not a good idea? Yes, okay, it should be in your journal. What else? I've just been using Zillow. Can I explain why that's a bad idea? Okay, good. What if they say we're just going to open houses? Can I explain why that's a bad idea, right? So we break down, that's the first part of converting them, is I'm already starting to separate myself from everybody else by asking these questions. And then when they give me a response, I'm like, okay, I can explain a better way. And then we explain agency, correct? And then what do? I explain value of our agency, why I think they should consider securing their own agent, the benefits of that, and then what do?
Encourage them to interview.
Yes. That's some of that advanced dialogue, right? Encouraging them to go get some referrals from friends and family, interview some agents, and then what do we offer them? I'll even give you the questions to ask those agents. Now you're really seeing their wheels turning, they're like, man, nobody else has said this. And then we know the questions to give them, right? State of the market, what's your process, all those. Because typically if somebody's gonna interview an agent, what's the questions that come to their mind? How long you been doing it? Means absolutely nothing. We've all co-opted with agents that have been doing it for 20 years and they're terrible. Okay, how many homes have you sold? Well, there's some people I've co-opted with that have sold 5 homes that are much better than people that have sold 100 homes. All right, those are not the right questions. We give them those questions. And then what do we say? Yeah, if you would allow me, I would love the opportunity to be one of those that you interview for the position of your buyer's agent, right? So remember, they go back to that open house boot camp, it's that dialogue. That to me is step number 1. And getting them to agree to an appointment with me. Because we have to get to that. I have to get to the point where I can set appointments. And the only way I can do that is by setting myself apart in that very first conversation. If you are not setting yourself apart, you will be out there working open house after open house after open house after open house. And you're gonna wonder, why in the world am I not getting clients from this? It's not the client's fault. It's our fault for not mastering our dialogue. Because all they do then is they walk in and see you exactly like every other agent. Why are they calling? They're not, okay? So remember, that dialogue is critical, okay? That dialogue is what moves me from here over to here. Because what is the value proposition that I offer? Hey, Joe. What is my value proposition to set this initial buyer consultation? I know I beat this horse to
I
death.
was gonna say, I feel like I should know.
I offer 4 things. Okay, yeah, because during, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, the beginning of my process with any potential buyers, we sit down for a consultation that's roughly what, 45 to 60 minutes? During that conversation, the things I want to cover is, you said what? Steps of the process. I want to cover with you all the steps of the process. I understand you might have bought a house in the past, well, maybe it's been a little while, or maybe this is your first home purchase ever. I want to make sure you understand exactly what's going to happen during this process. I want you to know every step that's coming along your way. I want you to know any out-of-pocket expenses you're going to incur along the way. There's my first item of value. If you were out, getting ready to buy a house and you've never bought one before, would it be helpful to you to know exactly what's going to happen? Yes, buyers want this information. They want to be educated. And as agents, sometimes we make the assumption that they just either don't want to know or we don't want to take the time to explain it. I don't know what it is, but it's just like, man, just trust me. I've got you, just trust me. Okay? Don't do that. So steps of the process is my first item of value. What else? Yeah, what is the state of the market? Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you've probably heard a lot of stuff from social media or just the media in general. A lot of that is very inaccurate information. So I want to talk to you about the state of the market. I'm a full-time real estate agent, which means I keep my fingers on the pulse of Kansas City real estate. I know exactly what's going on, when it's going on, but more importantly, I know why it's going on, and I know how it's going to impact you as a buyer. So I want to be able to explain all that to you so you understand exactly what's going on. Fair enough? Is that valuable for a buyer? To cut through all that crap that's out there on social media, all the fear mongering, all of that stuff. Come on, we've all heard it. The bubble, the market. We gotta be able to explain all that, okay? And I want to educate the buyer. So now I'm working with an educated buyer that's well informed, okay? And they know exactly what's going on and they know why it's going on. I hear agents out there all the time. Well, that's a seller's market. And I ask them, well, why is it a seller's market? No. I just heard somebody say it's a seller's market, so I'm going with it. I'm like, really? Okay. Can you explain that? Can you explain the difference between a seller's market, balanced market, and buyer's market? What makes the difference? Who can just tell me that? What gauge do I use? Inventory levels, thank you, okay? Okay, yeah, that would inventory would affect that, but what is the seller's market? Well, meaning less, remember, you can't just generalize, what do we mean?
1 to 3 months.
Okay, so yeah, we say under 4 months, so I'll take 1 to 3. 1 to 3, all the way up to 4 months is seller's market. Balanced is what?
Get 4 or 5.
4 to 5 months, and once we get beyond 6 months and beyond, we're in a buyer's market. I need to know that, okay? I need to be looking at the stats that KCRAR is putting out, I think usually the 10th of every month. What is our inventory level? Okay? And I need to be able to speak to that. Okay? So buyers are already starting to hear like, wow, this agent's different. Okay? They're actually explaining to me why it's a seller's market. Okay? And then it's a whole different conversation about the difference between now and 08. We won't go into that today, but you guys have heard me talk about that before, right? And hopefully you guys can relay that. So that's 2 items of value, steps of the process, right? State of the market. What else? Thank you, Marisha. Mutual roles and expectations. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I want to sit down. I want to cover with you all the things that I do expect from the people that I work with as buyers, but also it's very important, I understand what you expect from your agent. And we need to make sure that we agree upon those expectations and roles. Okay, so there's 3 items of value. What's the 4th? Yeah, detailed needs and wants analysis. I also want to do a detailed needs and wants analysis. It's very important that I know exactly what you're looking for. I do not want to waste any of your time showing you properties that do not meet your criteria. Okay? So there you go, 4 items of value. Okay, so I already led up to this by explaining the importance of buyer agency, making recommendations that, hey, go interview some agents, get recommendations from your friends and your family. And some people think it's crazy to do that. It's not crazy at all. Because I know the agents that they may go interview are gonna be typical. They're not gonna earn their business 9 times out of 10. And then I go into any buyer that works with me. This is my process. This is how it starts. Here's my 4 items of value. Once I've layered that value, I ask what question? Yeah, does that sound like that would be helpful to you? Never in my career did I ever have a buyer say, no, I don't think that sounds helpful at all. Every single buyer said, that actually sounds really helpful. Do you see how now, as I stood there in that open house and I had this level of conversation with the buyer, do you see why I now have a good chance of getting an appointment with this buyer? Yeah, if they're a serious buyer, right? Now, if they're just a tire kicker, they may not find value in that because it's not relevant to them. That's okay. It just means I need to stay in touch with them until they are ready, and then it becomes relevant, and then I get my appointment. Okay? So once they've said, actually, that sounds very helpful, that is an initial agreement, correct? And now it is much easier to then follow that up with, fantastic, when do you want to meet? I'm available Thursday at 3 or Friday at noon. I'd be happy to buy you lunch at Panera Bread, or we can meet in my office. What works for you? Right? Lock in the appointment. And if I can do it right, my show up rates start going through the roof. My show up rate to my consultations was high. I was well above 90% on my show up rate because I showed value. Buyers wanted that information. They're like, I want to show up to that. Does that make sense? So that's really that first thing is you have got to lay the groundwork to get the consultation set. And if you're not practicing that dialogue, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in your open house and just listen to you stumble through it. Okay? You've got to practice it. Remember, it goes on the tool belt. So when the opportunity presents itself, you're like, I'm ready. Let's go. It goes in that objection journal, and you guys should be scripting with each other because all you gotta do is hover over it. Look at it, pulls up the miniature screen, and you can just go through script after script after script after script. Okay, and you internalize that dialogue, and our show up rate goes through the roof. And then once they show up, how many of them do you think sat through that consultation with me and walked out thinking, I wouldn't want to use him? Very few. I won't say 100%, but pretty darn close to 100% were like, done. You've won us over. Okay? So we got to get that consultation set up. It's wonderful to go out and have conversation, but at some point you have to move beyond that. I can't just keep having conversation after conversation. I've got to start getting appointments set up. Right? Otherwise, you're going to be this hamster on the wheel. And we don't want to do that. Conversion plan. Again, we always have a no do have. So what do I need to know to be an effective buyer converter? It's all dialogue. It's all dialogue. It is all dialogue. And the things that I need to have. Criteria sheet. Who all has the criteria sheet for your couple? Okay. Yep. What is the criteria sheet? Yeah, that's what I need when I sit down and do that needs and wants analysis. There are some in the drive you can rip off if you want. You can create your own. Okay, that's fine. Do you have a sheet that breaks down roles and expectations? Yes, that should be part of your buyer packet. We have one of those. If you guys have seen mine, I only ask a couple things in my buyer. What are they? Who can tell me? I think we've shared that buyer packet probably with most of you.
Loyalty and referral.
Loyalty, referrals, and one other thing. Timely communication. That's it. That's what I ask for my buyers. Loyalty. Timely communication. There's nothing more frustrating when we have some time sensitive and we can't get them to buy. Like I set that expectation up front, like. When we're doing this, like you gotta be, like, I have to know how to get a hold of you. And that final thing is what referrals get earned. If you're happy with the process, if you like the service I provide, referrals, that's my first opportunity for referral leads. And then everything that I get, I personally confirm I'm gonna give to my buyers, that's a big long list. So if you look at my mutual roles and expectations, this whole site is full of things that I'm gonna give to them. Okay, so just be thinking about that. Do you have roles and expectations? Buyers agreements, yes. Sales contract, yes, yes. Letterhead, you have letterhead. Hopefully everybody does. Just go make one real quick if you don't. Everybody should have a letterhead saying. And then of course, note cards. Okay. Let's talk about some core beliefs, because this is important. Because what I believe impacts my behavior, correct? Yes. The thoughts that I have frequently, so frequent repetition of thoughts becomes what?
Reaction.
A belief. Yeah, you're right, yeah, okay. Do you agree with that? Has social media not proved that? You know that your feeds are custom designed to feed you things based off what you already are leaning towards? Has social media proved that they can impact sales of products, even elections, all kinds of things they can impact? Why? Because what? Frequently bombarded thoughts into your mind can start to shape your beliefs. That's why it is critical that we are super careful what we are putting into our minds. Okay, like social media, you better limit that. Because you get on that for too long, and what ends up happening? Everybody ever come away just like depressed? Like you go on social media, like, man, I don't even feel like doing anything right now. Get away from it, okay? Because that will kill your productivity. It will mess with you all over. So my frequent thoughts become beliefs. Beliefs then do what? Yeah, beliefs will then impact my actions. Okay, we're going back to some of the perspective type stuff here for momentum, right? Because it's important. So what I think turns into what I believe. What I believe is then demonstrated in my actions, which create my habits. All right, and then my habits end up what? Developing into my character, which then shapes my legacy. So you see how important it is that our thoughts up front have to be right? If I am not protective of those thoughts, it's gonna come all the way down and impact the legacy that I leave on this world. That's the truth, okay? So that's why we spend some time talking about our core beliefs. And these are ones that are kind of gonna be dealing with buyers, okay? Let's talk about number 2. My only limit is time. Why does that matter when it comes to converting buyers?
How you spend it.
Yeah, I have a limited amount of time, so I really want to be spending my time on serious buyers, not just any buyers. You ever had the buyers that come up and say, hey, if you find some cheap land, let me know? I have a list of, I don't actually have a list, but I tell them, I'll put you on a list. It's like a list of, one time I said that, but old my career, they say, yeah, I'd love to buy some land. If you find some cheap land, let me know. And I'm like, you and 10,000 other people are looking for that cheap piece of land, right? We have to guard our time, which means I need a process in place to determine, is this a serious buyer or are they just kicking tires? Because another belief is time reveals all, number 10. You'll find that buyer and you get super excited that you finally got one. And you'll go out and show them. And these are the buyers that usually drag you all over the place. Okay, you'll be looking all over the place. And a year later, you're still doing it. So we have to be careful. Okay, making sure that we have serious buyers. Duplicable processes and systems lead to successful results. We talked about that, right? Is your buyer process duplicable? Yes, it's in your drive, right? It's all there, it's made for you. MQL, those are the people that buy homes. What does MQL stand for?
Motivated, qualified,
There
loyal.
you go. I only wanna work with motivated, qualified, and loyal buyers. Those are the ones that deserve my attention now. If they are not, you got a decision to make. Do you wanna risk all the time, effort, and energy on that buyer that's not MQL? Right? Or do you wanna move on to find another buyer? You have to make that decision. I remember early on in my career, it's like, I'll take anything that's breathing. Right? I wasted a lot of time, so just be careful. Okay? Having a process reduces the risk that comes with buyers. What does that mean?
You won't skip steps, you won't miss anything.
I won't miss anything, and it also means that my process should weed out some of those buyers that aren't serious, because when I sit down with you during that consultation, part of what I'm figuring out is, are you motivated, qualified, and loyal? I've known some agents went out and shown a bunch of houses before the house, their buyer was even pre-approved. Remember, my rule was I'll give you one freebie, because if I get in front of you, I'll be able to convert you and I'm after the relationship. But then we've got to start talking about financing. Like I'm not gonna be out here just showing you house after house. Cause I've seen some where buyers like, oh yeah, but they show me they're good, they're not good, right? There's a reason people don't wanna get their pre-approval. And it's never gonna be good for you, okay? So be thinking about that. This is a big one for me. If they won't meet me, they are not a buyer. If they will not meet with you for an official consultation, I question whether they're gonna be MQL right from the beginning. Okay? Because if you're getting ready to spend $400,000 on a house, does it not seem reasonable that you would want to sit down and meet with the professional that's gonna help you do that? Yeah. You don't go into court without a consultation with your attorney. Generally, unless it's an emergency, you don't have surgery without a consultation with your surgeon, right? Like, why would it be any different when we're dealing with their most valuable financial asset? They're not meeting with me, they're not a serious buyer. I don't care where, even if it is a referral, a family member, we're sitting down for a consultation and we're going into the process, okay? There are 7 vital buyer responsibilities. Okay? And if you are a solo agent, you will be doing all 7, okay? Eventually, you may be able to leverage some of these out. But if I have a limited amount of time, I better be super focused and I better have clarity on what these activities are, correct? Okay, so lead generation. Who can tell me right now exactly what their lead generation for today is? Do what? It comes from your pillars. Anybody? You're doing an open house today?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I did, what?
No, what is your lead generation today?
I have 2 gift cards and 2 phone calls to do, and I also have a social media.
Okay, so at minimum, you have at least 4 personal touches that have to be done, and you have some social media work that has to be done. Where do I go to get my daily lead generation activities? Your schedule. That is why that schedule is so important. Because it's gonna tell you every single day, these are the people you call, right? These are the people you send note cards to. This is what you need to do on your social media. If open house is your pillar, here's what you need to do for your open house today, because today's Tuesday, right? So if you guys have an open house this week, yesterday, you should have identified your open house, yes. And then depending on what your schedule is today, there's gonna be activities for that. Could be posting it to social media, whatever your plan is, but there's gonna be activities for that. There's gonna be time in your bowl trail. Okay, everybody does bowl trail time today, correct? Everybody does some A-client activities today. Your whole schedule is built out. If you don't have that, we're already failing on step 1. Okay, because what that means is I'm just out here randomly doing things. Okay, and I'm just kind of hoping something sticks. Okay, and yeah, a blind squirrel will find a nut every once in a while. So you'll be able to do some business. But there's a big difference between doing 6 to 8 deals a year and doing 16 to 18 deals a year, correct? Yes. Okay, well then we have lead conversion. Okay, who can tell me what our lead conversion process is? Thank you. Yeah, literally, we just spent a bunch of time talking about that, right? On how we set the stage and then we set an appointment, because that's the beginning, okay? But maybe this person isn't ready yet. Maybe they're not ready for that appointment, so my job is to figure out where they at in the process, okay? Because my question to them, you know, what process you're using should start to open Pandora's box, and I'm gonna start figuring out. Through the conversation, okay, are they an A client, a B client, C client, etc., okay? Maybe we have some B clients. What is our conversion strategy for our B clients?
Follow them once a week.
Nope.
Twice now.
Yeah, twice a month, you're close to. Yeah, remember, because it's built into your, each one of you has it on your schedule. So it'll show you it's the first and third Thursday of the month, right, that we follow up with them. Not only is it there, where else is it? It's on the schedule for sure.
Christina's interested.
Yeah, it's on the business development calendars, you know that? Like, it's literally there, I put it in every single month when you're supposed to be following up with B clients, so if you guys. And then you should be getting it on your Google Calendar as well, so you have 3 reminders. On when to follow up with B clients. How many of you follow that?
Like every other Thursday, right?
Pretty much, yeah, sometimes you get an extra Thursday review bump, right? But that's a process for lead conversion. If I don't have that, then I'm just kind of randomly following up with these people. And then a ton of people start falling through the cracks. That's the danger. Every agent that's been around long enough will say, yeah, I've got a whole pond, as we'll call it, of people that are just kind of sitting there that come in and I just kind of drop the ball. Okay? Remember, if I believe that every single person that comes into my ideal operational model has the potential to be worth 75,000 over the course of my career, is it acceptable for me to let leads
No.
fall into that pond? Absolutely not, right? That's why if I truly believe this and I grasp this, I'm like, no way. I'm gonna figure out, are you an A, a B, or a C? I'm gonna put you in the right category and I'm gonna follow up appropriately. Okay? And our C clients are what?
Once a month.
Once a month, right? So first and third Thursdays are Bs, second Thursday are Cs. If you simply follow that, you're gonna be ahead of 98% of your competition on your follow-up, okay? So we talked about generation, it's on your schedule, it comes from your action plans, from your pillars. Lead conversion, you gotta have a plan for your Bs and C clients, because that's that constant pool, that's that pipeline that's gonna be feeding into you. Right, to become a client, so we have to have a process for that. We've also talked about how to set appointments with clients that are ready to go, all right? Administrative preparation, what is that?
Auto contract.
Yeah, it could be contracts, could be setting up the showing, getting your docs ready, it's all of that stuff. It's the stuff that we hate doing, let's be honest, okay? We hate doing that stuff, however, it has to be done. Showing. Do we have a process on how we show? I'm sure most of us do. But let's take our memory back to the new agent training program, shall we? So during that, we talk about how to show like a pro. You guys remember that? We have a whole module about that, showing like a pro. And in that, we talk about our opinions. Do our opinions matter? No, why do our opinions not matter?
I'm not buying the house.
We're not going to buying the house. I could hate the carpet, hate the paint, doesn't matter, that's my opinion, okay? But to show like a pro, what am I looking for? There's 3 main categories. Alex, fire away.
Safety.
Okay, safety, yeah, when I'm showing a house, I need to be skilled enough to be able to see things that are gonna come up on inspections, on appraisals, right, that are safety items. Why is it important for me to know that? Because I want my buyers prepared ahead of time. I'm not an inspector, I'm not gonna take the place of the inspector, but I can very clearly see whether there's GFI outlets or not. I can clearly see if it is a what? What are the type of panels that I get concerned about? Well, electrical panels, what? Okay, Sylvania, which is an offshoot of what? Zinsco, right? So Zinsco would be our main. Well, if I see Zinsco, I'm like, okay, that's gonna get flagged, and then Sylvania is one of theirs. What else? What other ones do they have? Two other main ones.
Pacific.
Federal Pacific, there you go, man, now it's your roll, what's the other one? I need to know these, right, if you're actually houses, you should know this, because this is like, if I see that panel in a house and he said, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, like. You don't need to freak out about this, but I promise you, when you have an inspection, the inspector is gonna call this out. Reason being is they used kind of somewhat inferior breakers and they were known to arc behind the breakers, which could potentially be fire hazards. So inspector's gonna call it out and say, hey, have an electrician come out. What does the electrician say? He says, yeah, you can pay me $750 to come out, disconnect everything, pull every individual breaker and check for any signs of arcing. Or you could pay what, $1,800 and I'll replace the whole thing. That's what a electrician's gonna tell you. So I already prepped my buyer for that, so they know, okay. Yeah, going into that. If I put in this offer, that's gonna be something you consider. If I don't have that information, I don't share it with them, they get sticker shock whenever they find out, you know, $1,800 from your panel. Okay, and my deal might just go. Right, you see the importance of me being able to say that, and Challenger was the other one, in case you guys didn't remember, right? Like those, if I see those, or if I'm with the seller on a walkthrough and I see that, I'm like, hey, Mr. Mrs. Seller, just so you know, this is gonna come up when the buyers do their inspection, right? So safety, showing like a pro, safety is something I'm looking for. What are the other two categories? Nope. What? Okay, roof would fall under what I call major components, so yes. I'm looking, is it a 3 tab, is it an architectural? Does it have proper venting? Do I see lots of granular loss that could make me think there's possible heat stress on that roof, right? Like, all of those things I'm looking for. I look at the HVAC, is it high efficiency? Is it your standard 80% or with, you know, that 4-inch steel or metal pipe? Which one is it, right? How old is the water heater? Do I see evidence of, you know, issues with that? Okay, so I'm looking at those major components. Because buyers aren't looking at those things. Most of them, they're looking at the pretty carpet, they're looking at the granite, the wrought irons, like, hey, all those things are wonderful. Okay, but if somebody just slapped cosmetic lipstick on this pig here, right, like it's still not good. Okay, so it's like, that's my job to make sure that I'm showing like a pro, and I'm looking at those things and say, hey, guys, just want to bring your attention to this, like. This thing's exceeded its, well, useful life, like that's gonna come up on an inspection, just be aware, I'm not saying we can't buy the house, but be aware. That that's there, okay, that's value to a buyer on show. You just open the door and say, wow, this is really pretty. No, don't need that. Okay, what's the third one? So we have safety, we have major components, plumbing or septic tank. Septic would be part of, yeah, structural. Structural, that's the third thing I'm looking at. I need to be able to tell the difference between a settlement crack and a structural crack, right? I need to know when I have downward settlement versus lateral movement from hydrostatic pressure, right? Those are things that I should be able to go into a house and see and be like, yeah, this house is beautiful, we really like it, but be aware this is going on. You know, are you carrying the tools with you, like a little string with the washer at the bottom, be able to put it up on the wall and see how much movement I've got, right? Those types of things, that's showing like a pro. That is a vital buyer responsibility. Alright. Not only am I looking for those 3 key components, but what am I taking with me from the consultation that I'm gauging this house by? Needs and wants, right? First time home buyers are very susceptible to this. They will walk in and they'll see that house and just got flipped. Okay, and they're loving it. And I'm walking through thinking, I'm like, I have their needs and wants right here. And I'm like, this ain't checking any of their boxes. But they're like, but it's so pretty. I think we'll be okay. I'm like, wait a minute, we can put granite in any house. We can get you new floor. What I can't do is I can't make it bigger. I can't get you this. I can't get you that. And sometimes you have to talk them off. It's like, hey, wait a minute. This is not going to meet your need. Because I don't want them calling me 6 months down the road after they buy it saying, we made a mistake, right? It's like, I failed them miserably. Now, I can have a clear conscience if I lead them down that path and they still say, well, we want it, and it's like. Okay, and just so you know, I was warned, okay? All right, writing and negotiating, that's another vital thing. Are you skilled in the contracts, right? And that goes well beyond just filling them out, okay? When you're in contract workshop, how much time do we spend filling them out? None. Literally none. Anybody can fill in blanks. That's not hard. What do we spend time talking about? How to explain it, and then the real world application to this. This paragraph, what does that mean? Because when you come to me with an issue with your contract, what am I gonna ask you? What's the contract say? Like, we're gonna fall back to the contract. And you would be amazed at how many agents out there do not understand contracts. Like, it blows my mind. You need to be a master of the contracts. You need to be able to say, okay, yeah, that's gonna be covered in paragraph 6, where we're talking about appraisals, like, we have to know those things and what they mean. Okay? There's so many nuances in those contracts, that's why we do contract workshops every month. How long did it take us to get through buyer agency? Huh? No way did we get through in 3 months. Sometimes we're getting through half a page in an hour, right? So yeah, it's probably like 6 months, 9 months, but there's a lot in there that we have to understand and be able to relay it to clients. So we have to be masters at writing them, and we also need to be masters at negotiating. What is a successful negotiation?
Getting the best deal for your client.
Getting the best deal from, so it's in there going and just beating the other side up.
Always.
Yeah, it's total, yeah, it is a win-win, right? So we're trying to find that common ground where everybody can win. Okay? Yes. Closing preparation, there's a lot that happens before closing, would you agree? That's all built into your process. You know, 7 to 10 days before, we should be starting to make the calls, checking on repairs, setting up the walkthrough, setting up the closing. Letting people know about their down payment funds, letting people know about their IDs. All of that stuff should be happening. Can't tell you how many times we get. Actually, we do really well. Yeah, we've had times in the past where we struggle. But issues arise in the last hour. And it's like, did you look at your title commitment? When you were supposed to? Well, no, I trust the title. There's a process, okay? You are responsible for all that, make sure you're aware. And then post-closing activities, do you have a checklist? As soon as we close, boom, 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 boom. Still to this day, every single month, I don't know if a month goes by where we're not having somebody get fined for not switching a status in MLS. And some of them I'll catch,
Yeah.
like Bree, I can't remember what I texted you at like 10:30 to 11, I'm like, hey, this is gonna be a problem, right? But it's every month, so if you just follow your process, and generally it's not switching one that's closed, right? That's the one that gets us the most. And they give us like, what, 10 days, 10 or 14 days, and we still violate it? And then the other one is, we get in trouble over pre-class. And then we get in trouble of not switching one when it goes under contract. So you get 1 day, right? 1 day. So if I have a process, I don't like paying MLS. And by God's goodness, I have never paid them a single fine in my career. And I hope to never pay it. Because like, why would I give you $50? I can put a process in place to ensure I don't pay you. Okay? So we're gonna stop here today. So you guys remember 7 vital buyer responsibilities. Okay? If you have any weaknesses in any of these, we're gonna cover all this stuff in greater detail when we move forward, okay? Any questions from today? Bree, what is one thing you learned? Because if we didn't learn something while we're here, then we're in trouble.
Fresh as well, because I haven't went on a show in a little bit, so. Just
So we need to get back to the basics, then you start using our dialogue to set appointments, correct? Because those appointments are what then lead to, Joe, would you learn?
Learn about the panels, Federal Pacific,
Okay.
Challenger.
All right,
So I need to memorize those as well, get stuff from my
okay,
head.
so that is part of it, that's part of the showing, right, showing like pros, okay, Brian?
I need to put a little more emphasis on the 4 items of value. I think I discussed them in a roundabout way in my conversation, but I will eventually pointing them out as items of value in our lives. I think that would be beneficial.
Okay, and we'll get into another variation of that conversation in one of the later classes, right, because it's in here. About how to set a meeting, okay? So again, if I do all that work and can't get a meeting set. I'm not gonna move more, okay, Mauricia?
Just. Like our conversation, practicing the first thing on the house, but I really need to get on that,
Okay.
so I don't.
Yep.
So I can sound confident.
Yep. Okay. Jeff?
I just say mainly the things that, well, besides the paper panels, but the things that offer value. Buyers, but
The buyer will show up to a consultation, which is the whole beginning of my conversion, really, right? If I can show value, if I can show value and show why I am different. Through my dialogue, through my presentation, people will show up, because people want to know this. Barry?
I just am lax about setting an appointment, I will talk to people on the phone and I will, we will email back and forth, but not actually have to sit down. At a specific place and go through those processes, so I need to get, not that I learned it, it's just. A refresh and,
Part of it is you need to believe in the value of that meeting yourself,
Yeah.
right? Because remember, what we do as consultants is, well, we're gonna educate them. That's what my value proposition is. People ask, why should I use you? Well, yeah, you ask, one of the things that sets me apart is what? I am a consultant, not a salesperson. I'm not here just to sell you a house. I am here as a consultant to provide you with the knowledge and information and tools necessary to make the most informed decision for you and your family regarding your real estate needs. That's my role. Okay, so if I truly believe in that, then I believe that every buyer should be in a consultation. Because they're gonna come out far better than when they came in. That's my goal with the consultation. If I truly believe that, then I'm gonna try to funnel everybody into that. And then once you're in my consultation, that's the process. Everybody gets funneled into that process and you'll be amazed at what starts happening on your conversion rates. And then when people experience that process, which is the ultimate fan experience, you'll be amazed at what happens on your referrals. Right? Because then not only do they experience that, but once they complete that, I don't abandon them at closing like 73% of agents do. They move over into advocacy and every one of you has a touch plan in place, correct? That it may seem like, man, this seems like it's overwhelming, it's too much, it's not. Okay, it's not too much, I promise you. Because a lot of people think it's enough to just send an email once a month and call once a year. That is not an effective touch plan. So our people move to the touch plan, and then guess what? We are in flow with them, we are in constant communication with them, and you'll be amazed what happens with referrals and with your business, okay? Can you get some without it? Yeah, you're ready to get stuff. Like I said, blind squirrel will find a nut. We want to be super intentional. Alex, what about you?
I think the 4 steps in the buyer consultation, and then also is making sure, friends and family also receive the ultimate thing.
Yeah, so don't cheat your friends and family, okay? And again, those are my 4 items of value. You come up with something different, use it. If it's providing value to a client, use it. I'm just giving you mine. What mine were the things that I would cover with them. Very easy.
Everything, but.
Close to those, yes. Don't be one of these agents that crashes and burns, because then you're stuck in this loop forever. Okay? Okay, guys, that's it for today. Thank you for being here. I think we have the next part next week, which will be going into vital wire activities. All right. All right, thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Matthew.
My pleasure.